Another Democratic primary has exposed the growing divide between the party's establishment and its socialist wing. While a self-described moderate survived in Arizona, Democratic Socialist candidates continue to build momentum across the country, raising growing concerns about whether the party is moving too far left, just as it heads into a critical midterm election. And joining us now to discuss is national correspondent for the Daily Signal, Tony Kinnett. Good morning to you, sir. Good to see you.
Good morning, Jan. Good to be with you.
You know, Democrats would normally expect to enter a midterm election playing offense. Instead, they're spending a lot of time right now defending themselves against challenges from their own left flank. How much of a political liability is this?
It's a massive political liability, and in the strangest of cases, it appears to be a lesson that wasn't learned from Republicans back in 18, 20, and 22. So as you'll recall, in 18 and 22, the last two midterm elections where there were some significant inter-party squabbles, it was kind of the populist right, which was attacking the right flank of the more establishmentarian Republicans. And they did really well in primaries, and then they did not do so well in midterms. Now we see almost the pendulum swinging back even harder with the Democrats. The socialist-aligned candidates are pushing extremely aggressively in the primaries. You get to the general, and all of a sudden, those poll numbers look a little bit hairier.
Right. I'm glad how you distinguish between a primary election and the general election, because as you said, you can win the primaries and then totally bomb out there in the general election, because many of these Democratic Socialist candidates are running on socialized health care. They're running to abolish ICE. They're running on these far-left policies. How big of a risk is the party taking by nominating candidates, as you said, who might appeal to activists, might appeal to the short term in the primary, but could struggle with independent voters who often decide these competitive races?
And not just independent voters. The real liability also comes with traditional party demographics. We see in the American South and the American Northeast right now a lot of traditionally Democrat supporters among many black communities who are calling out to the Democrat establishment, begging for campaign assistance, for attention, for commercials, for revenue, because they're not getting it anymore. All of the Democrat media, all of the Democrat resources are going to these socialist-aligned activist candidates, and it's causing a lot of individuals, at least according to the most recent Politico article on this, in the South to say that they may lose formerly deeply blue districts because black voters really don't care for socialism, at least according to the kind of traditional crosstabs in the American South.
Right. And Michigan's Senate primary has now become one of the clearest examples of that debate, with the establishment backing Haley Stevens, right? Progressive wing rallying behind Abdul Al-Sayed. Could that race become a blueprint for what we see play out across the country in next year's midterms?
As weird as it sounds, I want to hold my tongue on this for one reason, and it's actually due to last night with Arizona, because in some of the more purplish districts and purplish states in the country, where we've seen things go both blue and red, we saw Kai Newkirk lose to a very basic kind of run-of-the-mill Democrat, a lot like Haley Stevens in Michigan, in the Arizona 4th primary, and pretty badly. That election you alluded to earlier, 68-32. Yikes.
Right.
Abdul Al-Sayed, though, he has a bigger amount of momentum, especially from those in Dearborn, Michigan. And he's trying to say, I'm not openly a socialist, but I'm also promoting the universal health care and a lot of the other socialist regulatory policies of the DSA. It's not clear where that election is going yet. The chips are being thrown. And it's the young kind of energetic primary. I just don't know how well that's going to translate in November. Mike Rogers, who's running for re-election on the Republican side, or I should say running again, he only lost to Elisa Slotkin last time by 0.3%. So that's a tight margin.
Very, very tight. Very tight. And we've also seen Democrats scramble in states like Maine after their Senate nominee, Graham Plattner, exited the race, and they had to find that replacement. So when you put all this together, is the bigger problem for Democrats their ideology, recruitment of candidates, or the fact that they're just spending so much time fighting themselves instead of focusing on Republicans?
It's a newer problem for Democrats, that the fighting amongst themselves. Of course, Nancy Pelosi was known, kind of the earlier corporatist Democrat party of the aughts and the teens, was known for kind of holding things together and moving more in lockstep. And you don't really see that in this new party, as that group that I just mentioned is claimed to be leaving everyone behind and selling out, etc. And I just don't know if what we're seeing here is a combination of all of those storm factors that you said, or a lack of a response in a time when they should really have it easy going against Republicans and more of a stale Congress. We're just not seeing any promises other than health care, and that's kind of an issue when there's a lot of things voters are concerned about.
Yeah, because typically A midterm is for the party that's not in the White House. That's typically the party that has the advantage in that case. What are some key races you're watching right now?
Well, Michigan, of course, absolutely. You called me right on the carpet there. I'm still keeping an eye on what's going on in Maine because Troy Jackson is supposed to be gaining lots of momentum, and he's not. He's already being hit with allegations of mortgage fraud, of throwing a bottle at a woman. Things are not going to get uninteresting in Maine. It's going to keep being a spicy one. And I'm also keeping an eye on some of the other Senate races around the country. North Carolina, I'm interested in seeing if Roy Cooper, the former governor, can actually be painted as aligning with some of the left-wing parties, giving Whatley on the Republican side a chance to gain momentum. We'll have to see. So far, it's a very strange place to be in when the Republican Party in power, all they have to do is be quiet because the other side just needs to say, here's what they would do instead. And I still haven't seen that from the Dems. It's the most unusual midterm election I can ever remember studying.
It really is. All right, national correspondent for the Daily Signal, Tony Kinnett. Always a pleasure to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Jan, take care.